You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. I am your host, Jeff Hinshaw. Thanks for tuning in. Cosmic Cousins is dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. And it is here to bring you back into alignment with the cosmos. So thank you for being here as always. Hey, Cosmic Cousins. Welcome back to another week of this podcast. It's an honor, as always, to be here with you, and particularly at this time. We are gathering for the Scorpio Full Moon Total Lunar Eclipse. That's right. You heard me. The Scorpio Full Moon Total Lunar Eclipse. So what does this mean for us? We're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about some of the major aspects and transits that are taking place during this full moon lunation. And right now I have in my hand a big slab of labradorite. Labradorite is often referred to, I've heard of it nicknamed as Merlin stone, but it's a darker stone that kind of has like this iridescent quality to it, almost like a mermaid's tail. Like if you change the angle of it and notice how the light hits it, it will bring in colors of like blues and greens and maybe even some aqua and turquoise. So I'm bringing this up because the Earth is here to support us. Right now, the North Node is in Taurus, South Node is in Scorpio, which is why we're in eclipse season. The nodes of fate will always denote to us the times of year that we are receiving eclipses and going through the eclipse portal. So when you look in your birth chart, whatever sign the North and South Node are in will indicate to you eclipse season during the year of your birth. So right now, South Node in Scorpio and the full moon in Scorpio are hanging out with each other. We'll get into that invitation in a moment. But this labradorite feels important for me. It's a stone that I use to activate and awaken my psychic gifts and my ability to communicate those gifts to you all. But at the same time, it grounds and it protects the energy too. So labradorite is the stone that I used when I wore a necklace with labradorite on it when I launched the podcast back in 2017. And I've reconnected to it this week, and it feels really nice to have it here with me. So yes, I mean, Scorpio is a very witchy energy, so get witchy on this full moon. It's an eclipse, so be light with the ritual. This is not necessarily a time to set new seeds of intention or to call in things. It's more of a time to allow the energy to transform you. And so you can think of laying in Shavasana and resting. You know, Shavasana, corpse pose, which is quite Scorpio-like. The phrases I have for us: I harness, I release, I transform. I harness, I release, I transform. Allow this to be a mantra for yourself. You could repeat these words to yourself. Maybe you write them down, fill in the blank, elaborate on them. Maybe you pull a tarot card for these 3 phrases. I will always offer you 3 phrases for each lunation. And these are the phrases that I'm intuitively feeling for us for the Scorpio full moon. I harness, I release, I transform. You can bring awareness to the parts of the body that Scorpio is connected to. This is the region around the sacral chakra. So this is the reproductive organs, the anus, the bladder, the hips, the energy in and around this part of the body. And so when we think of the anus, this is the place of the body where we release and compost. So the phrase I release is connected here. Taurus, the polar sign, we're in Taurus season, is connected to the mouth, nourishment, what we put in our body, and then Scorpio is what we release. So, Scorpio full moon eclipse, blessings to you. You can breathe into these parts of the body, send love here. Notice what wisdom is held here. And as we connect to these phrases and to these parts of the body, we can begin to acknowledge the presence of Scorpio in our life and acknowledge the presence of the moon. And this is a time of transformation. This is a time of rebirth. Always on the Scorpio full moon. But particularly this one, since it's an eclipse, it brings heightened emotion and psychic receptivity up to the surface. And so this full moon is the full moon of the year that really reveals to us major themes for this entire year, 2022, and through the first half of 2023. Because this is the time period that the South Node is in Scorpio. And so things that are arising right now can give us an indicator of some shifts that might be taking place in the greater whole. And you can think back to November of 2021. This is when we had our first eclipse on this Scorpio-Taurus axis. And, it's the Scorpio full moon. It likely digs up deeper truths in our life. Scorpio can be connected to secrets. So things that are hidden, long kept secrets, information that is buried in the unconscious may be revealed. Whether this is in your own personal life or more collectively, this could be the collective unconscious as well. And so for some, this can feel scary. This can feel ancestral. Like it starts to kick up things that are living underneath the surface. For others of us who are maybe more Scorpio, are highly attuned to this might feel exciting. This might feel like the place that you dwell. I think a Scorpio is wanting to have deeper conversations, wanting to get to the truth of the matter. And so for some of us, again, this might feel like a time of being energized and feeling powerful. For others of us, it might feel intense. And so just be mindful of that when we're interacting with people in the world and with each other, with clients and family members. As Scorpio, it can be very familial and ancestral. So we're in eclipse season until the new moon. The new moon will be in Gemini, and that is at the beginning of June. The last day of May 30th, 2022 is the Gemini new moon. This Scorpio full moon, to give us the exact date, is May 15th, Sunday, May 15th at 9:14 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So for some of you, it may be May 16th. I've been meditating on the number 15. I'll talk about it in our conversation that's going to come up in a moment with Eryn Johnson, who wrote a poetry collection called Moon Sign, and it's a story of death and rebirth. So in our conversation, we talk about sexuality, transformation, and we reflect on a lot of the Scorpio themes. Eryn Johnson is the host of the podcast Living Open. So it was really cool to speak with them about their new poetry collection. They have a lot of Scorpio energy in their chart, and we talk about that too. So this full moon, again, May 15th for some of us, May 16th for others of us. In our conversation with Eryn, we talk about the number 15 and its connection to the devil. So I'm feeling the devil energy on this full moon. This is the underworld, right? The devil. Devil's Capricorn's soul growth card, and Pluto is in Capricorn right now, which is Scorpio's modern ruling planet. Both Scorpio and Capricorn can work with the devil card. For some of you, this full moon is on the 16th, which is the Tower card. Tower feels very Scorpio too and is traditionally associated with Mars. Mars is the traditional ruler for Scorpio. So we've got both Mars and Pluto are activated on this full moon. So we'll look at what's going on with these two planets to give us deeper insight into this full moon. But yeah, in the world around us, this Scorpio full moon may have us all feeling a bit more intense, a bit more sensitive, maybe some of us a bit more sexual. And we are all highly attuned to the unseen forces at play at this time. So this makes us quite adept in our ability to peer into the mystery of it all. So new information is likely to emerge for us, particularly around the Scorpio themes, sexuality, power dynamics, shared resources, and finance. So we were talking about Scorpio's ruling planets. Scorpio's modern ruling planet is Pluto and is currently in Capricorn. Pluto is at the 28th degree of Capricorn and recently stationed retrograde. It will be retrograde throughout the summer. Pluto will retrograde for about a third of the year every year, so that's quite normal. But it is interesting because it is at the same degree as the United States Pluto. So we're having the United States Pluto return, and this is bringing the focus towards the Capricorn archetype. We've been going through a death, rebirth, and transformation in Capricorn since 2008. And so this Scorpio full moon happening during the United States Pluto return, it does bring a focus to Capricorn at the 28th degree in our chart. And also a lot of these themes that we're talking about, sexuality, power, shared resources, are likely related to government, authority, your career and public appearance, and the environment. So things that are surfacing in the collective around Roe versus Wade is definitely connected to this Scorpio full moon lunation. And we've also seen in the collective, I know a congressman in North Carolina was exposed for sexual videos that leaked on the internet. There's been other sexual themes that have arisen in the world around us. So be mindful of who you interact with and engage with around these topics. Because when we're under the influence of this Scorpio full moon, we all may be more magnetically drawn towards outdated patterns. This can be self-sabotage, drugs and alcohol, power dynamics, sexual compulsion, codependency, obsession, conspiracy, secrecy, manipulation. So this is getting us into some of the shadow of Scorpio and Pluto energy. So it's important to, bring the Scorpion into your mind's eye, sharp discernment and precision. Consciously focus your energy on healing, transformation, illumination. Practices like tarot and ancestral work are highly potent during this eclipse portal. Fixed water, Scorpio's fixed water, creating a container to hold space fixed for emotional transformation, water. I use the King of Cups in the tarot to meditate on fixed water. So some of the notable astrological aspects for this Scorpio full moon total lunar eclipse, I broke it down into the three major aspects. I'm not getting into Mercury retrograde in this episode. That did not make the top three. But Mercury is retrograde. We'll talk about that more on the Gemini new moon. But for now, the three main things that I wanted to talk about: Mars conjunct Neptune in Pisces, Saturn and Vesta in Aquarius square the Scorpio full moon, and the Scorpio full moon is conjunct the south node of fate. So these are the three main things I wanted to talk to you about. So first one, Mars conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and it is trine to the Scorpio full moon. So the image that came to mind, Mars and Neptune hanging out with each other in the sign of Pisces. A fierce spiritual warrior dances to otherworldly music as a radical act to bring about deep intergenerational healing. Mars conjunct Neptune in Pisces, trine the full moon in Scorpio. A fierce spiritual warrior dances to otherworldly music as a radical act to bring about deep intergenerational healing. So with Mars and Neptune together in Pisces, we're gifted the opportunity to direct our ambition towards universal compassion. So a question for reflection is, how might you consciously, this is Mars, how might you consciously direct your life force towards mystical, spiritual, and ethereal topics, Neptune? Towards the mystical, towards the spiritual, towards the ethereal. Mars is the traditional ruler for Scorpio, so it does have a bit more power on this full moon and is trine to the full moon eclipse. And the South Node in Scorpio is also trine to this Mars-Neptune conjunction. So there is a sense of spiritual cord cutting. Mars likes to sever things, so does the South Node. So being in Pisces, there's big karmic closeouts for the evolution of our soul. So for embodied health here, it does feel important. This is a big, expansive, ethereal energy to bring your awareness to the base of your spine. This is Mars. To the anus. This is Scorpio. This helps to anchor us in all of whatever that Neptunian fog is that's going on. So it's a time of anchoring while also being spiritual. This Scorpio full moon is also square to Saturn and Vesta, currently conjunct in Aquarius. The image that came to mind is elders with candles gathering together in a circle to grieve. So you can bring that visualization in. Elders with candles gathering together in a circle to grieve. So Saturn and Vesta, Saturn is the planet of old age, responsibility, restriction, and can be connected to people who are houseless, people who are in need of charity, people who are working hard. Saturn and Vesta. Vesta is connected to our spiritual devotional practices. They're currently together in Aquarius, the sign of humanity and the collective. So this is encouraging us to commit to our devotional practices and community. Light a candle. This is Vesta for humanity. This is Aquarius. Light a candle for humanity. Tidy up your living space. Restructure your health routines for greater perspective. Seek the objective vantage point of friends. Surround yourself with others interested in progressing society forward towards equality and liberation for all beings. Gather in ritual with like-minded people and spirits, even if through the internet. So we might feel obstacles around a lot of these themes in our life. Saturn can make us feel restricted. But we are encouraged to engage through devotion with the collective. So this is the Scorpio full moon square Saturn and Vesta in Aquarius. This Scorpio full moon is also conjunct the South Node of Fate. And because of this full moon, it's conjunct the South Node of Fate, right? So this is what makes this a total lunar eclipse. Whenever the lunation is close to the nodes of Fate, it denotes total lunar eclipse or solar eclipse, depending on if it's the sun or the moon. But the South Node is in the sign of Scorpio from January 2022 to August of 2023. South Node in Scorpio. So during this period of time, the Scorpio parts of our chart are getting a deep clear out and cleanse. So whatever placements you have in Scorpio are likely going through major shifts and upgrades and fateful realignments, especially the Scorpio placements that are from 20 to 27 degrees in your chart. Because of the polarity, there's always the polarity. The nodes of Fate are in this opposition. So since the South Node is around these degrees of Scorpio, right now the South Node is at the 22nd degree of Scorpio. It means the North Node is in Taurus at the 22nd degree, which means the Sun is in Taurus conjunct the North Node on this full moon. Again, fateful realignments, new directions, expansive opportunities arise at this time to more deeply root us in our sense of self-worth. So the affirmation I have for us for this Scorpio full moon, I release the past with joy. It's simple. I release is Scorpio. The past, Scorpio and the South Node. I release is Scorpio, the past is the South Node, with joy. This is Taurus. This is the Taurus North Node. So breathe this affirmation in. I release the past with joy. Notice how it shifts the body, the mind, and the spirit. Repeat this to yourself a few times as we transition into the next part of this episode. I release the past with joy. Again, wishing for you an easeful Scorpio full moon. I have a few updates for us before we get into our conversation with Eryn Johnson. The updates is more that this is an eclipse, so I don't really have updates. This full moon eclipse is personal to my own chart. Again, it's at the 25th degree of Scorpio, which is the same degree as my Scorpio midheaven. The midheaven is the top of the chart, so that represents your public appearance. So I am quieting myself to listen to what this transit has to reveal to me. This is only once every 18 and a half years that the South Node will transit your midheaven. So I'm quieting to see what wants to be revealed around my midheaven themes, my career, my work in the world, my public offerings. So for now, I'm quieting. I'm letting this eclipse do what it will. There are no new announcements for me around offerings. Once eclipse season is over, that's on the Gemini new moon, again, May 30th. Memorial Day. The eclipse season is over and Mercury stations direct on June 3rd. So I will likely have new and exciting announcements on the Gemini new moon or just after that. But in the meantime, if you are in need of a check-in, I do have new availability for June and July for deep dive astrology and tarot healing sessions. I also, we were talking about Mars conjunct Neptune and Pisces and the ends of cycles. I also just finished out working with two clients, one-on-one, two mentorship clients that I've been working with for the last 6 months. So that felt like a really big release. So I do have some spots opening up for one-on-one mentorships. But I'm not trying to get into all of that. This is eclipse season, so I'm just going to leave it at that for now. But if you are wanting to check in, I have some new availability for June and July. And so I look forward to the potential of connecting with you. And at this time, we're ready to go into our conversation with Eryn Johnson. So a little bit about Eryn. Eryn, pronouns she, they, is a space holder, facilitator, creative, poet, witch. Eryn offers support specifically for those who are healing from the impacts of dogmatic religion and purity culture, especially Christianity. Eryn holds trauma-informed space for you to heal and embody more of yourself, especially after religion and through deconstruction. Currently, Eryn's main offerings are Holy, which is a reclamation circle for ex-religious folks, and it's run seasonally. The Religious Trauma Healing Workbook, every other month virtual breathwork for ex-religious and deconstructing folks, and every other month erotic poetry writing class. If you want one-on-one support, you can check out Eryn's Embodied Self private sessions. So at this time, let's go ahead and transition into our conversation, which is titled A Story of Death and Rebirth, which I got from the back of Eryn's poetry book called Moon Sign, that is coming out. It's being released here, I think May 20th, Eryn said, start of Gemini season. So pick yourself up a copy. I'll put a link in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Okay, so today with us on Cosmic Cousins, we have Eryn Johnson, pronouns she, they, queer writer, poet, and trauma-informed facilitator in Philly. They are the host of the Living Open podcast, and they recently released a poetry collection titled Moon Sign. So y'all know you're going to love this. It has a giant, juicy blood orange moon on the cover. And before even diving into the topics of the book, just by looking at the cover, I was already like, this is giving me some Scorpio vibes. And I was right. Like, as I started uncovering the topic, I was like, this is some major Scorpio. But I was like, Eryn isn't a Scorpio. And then I pulled up your chart and I was like, oh yeah, we've got like a major Scorpio stellium going on in your chart. So we're going to get into it today. And so it's an honor to have you here with us. We're here in honor of the Scorpio Full Moon total lunar eclipse. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So what's your big three?
So Libra Sun, Aries Moon, Virgo Rising.
That's right. And you have, is it okay to share about your chart?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, I was noticing, I was like, oh yeah, Chiron rising.
Mm-hmm.
So I even feel that with the topics that you're writing in this book, this ability to just share about your own experiences and maybe ones that are a bit more traumatic in your life and things that you have also brought a great deal of healing to and stepped into the role of a teacher and a healer, which is Chiron. So seeing the Chiron and Virgo right there on the ascendant is pretty powerful. And then just so that we can highlight the Scorpio energy in your chart, what do you have in Scorpio? Do you remember? You have so many things hanging out.
I've got a lot. Let's see if I can tell you everything. I've got North Node in Scorpio, Venus in Scorpio, Jupiter in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio, and then also like a Juno asteroid, I think, if you have that up too. Is that everything?
No, I do. I do. I have Juno at the same degree as the North Node.
Mm-hmm.
Both at the 15th degree, which we're going to come back to that number 15 in a moment. So a little foreshadowing.
Okay, I'm excited.
But Juno is connected to partnerships and intimacy and relationship. Juno to me feels like bringing Libran and Scorpio energy together. So it's fascinating to see that there with your North Node too. So yeah, and all of that's in the third house, which I connect that to House of Writing. That's one of its themes. So it's cool to see it manifest here in this book. So what inspired you to write this book? Did it come all at once, or was it a collection of poems that you had that you put together throughout time?
So I didn't know that I was allowed to write a book or a poetry collection. And I've been writing my whole life. I was like a nerdy kid who loved to read and write and like wrote novels and stories and poems at recess instead of playing outside. And I sort of like fell away from writing and writing poetry specifically when I started growing up and moved schools in high school and was like, oh God, I need to be cool and fit in and make friends and I don't know anybody and this is weird. So I have to like learn how to not be myself. And I started to return to poetry slowly when I like dated a poet in college and after graduating. And really it was just a couple of years ago that I was like, oh, right, this is like something that has always been there for me and is actually really important to me. And writing poetry has been really helpful for processing and for healing and also for creative expression in like a fun way. But I think there's something about writing poems and writing these poems especially that feels like expressing that these stories matter and these things that have happened to me matter. And even if that's just for me to write about and to share, like it's important for me to do that. So I had a lot of poems already that are in this collection before I decided it was going to be a collection. And I was talking with someone who is a poet who holds space for this poetry workshop that I've been attending pretty regularly. And she was asking me like what I wanted to do with my poetry. Like, is this just something I just want to write poems and that's great? Or did I want to like write a book or do something else with it? And I was like, oh, can I? Can I though? And I feel like with that permission giving, I really started to see how not all of the poems I had written, but a lot of the poems I had written really connected. And then from there, I was like, oh, what else do I want to tell in this story? And it sort of came together in that way. So it wasn't all at once, but then once I was like, okay, this book is going to be a container for this story. A lot more poems started to fill in.
Yeah, I love that you're saying, I didn't know I could write a book, or, you know, can I really do that? I'm kind of feeling into your nodal axis with that too, having that you have the South Node in Taurus in the ninth house, and then the North Node in Scorpio in the third house. And so it's almost like the South Node in Taurus almost feels like getting pulled into being a teacher that's connected to the body, but you're learning to evolve towards sharing the more intimate parts of your life through writing, but they're connected. I mean, the nodal axis is always connected. And you're in your nodal opposition right now. So we have the North Node's currently in Taurus and the South Node's in Scorpio. And I know for me in my life, when I had my nodal opposition, that's when things really kind of started clicking into place around that axis. And I kind of stepped into a role as a teacher, started charging money for my offerings. So usually that nodal opposition happens right before our Saturn return. So we're building up to that. But before we get like too into the astro, I think it would be good for us to share what this book is about, what the topics are, and maybe even share a little bit of a disclaimer before we go in there, which you so beautifully do in the intro. And so I thought maybe we could read the intro or part of the intro, especially like the last paragraph that has the content warning, just to prepare people. And really, there's always a content warning when we have Scorpio episodes. That's just kind of how it works. Yeah. So, yeah. Would you like to read some of the intro? And
sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Is there a place you want me to start, or you just want to?
Maybe at the beginning, and then if you want to read the whole thing, you're welcome to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, it's a page. It's not like a 20-page intro or something, so I think it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. When I first started writing this collection, it told a completely different story. As my life started changing, I realized the entire collection was rooted in the idea that I'm basically bad and wrong. It held denying myself on a pedestal, and it spoke about dismembering myself as necessary. The poems explored ways I tried to fix my bad and wrong self. Those poems are still part of the story, but they're no longer the whole story. There's more to tell about following desire, about wholeness, about inherent goodness, about what it means to be alive. These poems are an exploration of healing, of queerness, of desire. They explore hunger as a driving force. The collection wanders into corners and caverns of my unfolding self and asks, who am I? It's about what has shaped me. It's about becoming. Through interpersonal harm, through religious trauma, the trauma of living under cis-heteropatriarchy, falling in love, coming out. It tracks my journey of coming into my queer identity and making a life that is full and that fits. It's a documentation of coming home, of the integration of fragmented parts of self, and the liberation of embodying wholeness. The poems are really rooted in a desire to become more of myself, and they ask, what does it take to get there? What happens along the way? When you stop trying not to fall apart, what is left? Where do you go from here, and what do you make? Cheryl Strayed of Dear Sugar talks about building temples from your obliterated places, and these poems are what I built from mine. I hope you enjoy them. In a content warning note, these poems deal with mentions of physical abuse, rape, sexual assault, violent sexual fantasy, religious trauma, homophobia, and other content that could potentially be triggering. Please take care of yourself and take breaks as needed.
Yeah. Yeah, such a beautiful introduction. And I feel your Libran quality of being able to hold space for all of it and communicate about it in a really clear way. And just hearing you read it, it's an even different experience than just reading it myself. There's a calmness to your voice that maybe balances out the heaviness of the topics. So I feel Libra Sun ruled by Venus and Scorpio. So yeah, it's cool. So why don't we get into some of the poems now that we have the intro? And before we do that, I just want to share this part because books are so mystical. Like actually having something physical in your hand, like the time that you receive the book there's always like some sort of mystical portal that opens when it's like a book that's going to be like one that you really connect with. And so I had just given a tarot reading to a friend, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I received her book right after the tarot reading. Like I literally went to the mailbox right after the reading, and then I opened up the book. And the first page that I opened was the quote that you have in the book from her. And I was just like, oh, wow, something's happening here.
That's amazing.
I sent a picture of it and texted it to her because I was like, can you believe this just happened? So the quote that you have and it's like right after it's right after the table of contents. And it's, in the dream I woke up and continued to dream. In the dream I dreamed and continued to wake up.
Yeah.
I was curious why you chose this quote as part of the intro here.
I feel like that quote has taken up residence inside me the second that I read it and has never left. I think there's so much about living fully and about queerness that feels like a dream and felt like a dream for my entire life that could never actually happen or could never actually be real. And so I feel like I dreamed of this life that I have for so long. And within that dream, I've woken up, and within my waking life, I've continued to dream into it. And I think that so much of queerness and also just like living authentically and making lives that feel full and whole and fit is about dreaming, envisioning what's unseen and creating new ways of being, and it's magic. So that quote feels like a hard to put words to because it feels like a somatic experience and it just feels so right in my body, and I knew I wanted it to open the book.
Yeah. And for me, it's really sweet for me to reflect on it in that way because I came out like 20 years ago now. And so actually reading your collection of poems, when did you come into your queerness or come out about your queerness?
I came out as bi when I was 23 maybe, and I'm 27. And then I came out as a lesbian / not into cis men, but lesbian doesn't quite fit. I don't know, really gay at 26.
Yeah. So for me, this book felt very nostalgic for me, this collection. Also because I'm from Virginia. So you reference a lot of East Coast locations. You're based out of Philly. So yeah, seeing this quote on the front, though, I thought it was cool because Sarah Faith Gottesdiener is an openly queer mystic in our community that we look up to, and also is really connected to the moon as an offering. So just see, like, it made sense for me, even just the person who the quote came from too.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I know them.
I also think it's cool for me to have that quote in the book because Sarah's work in particular has been really powerful for me on my journey with like witchcraft and healing. So it's been like such a support in that way too.
Yeah. So it's a way of honoring. So the poem I would like to read, I'm going to read a poem to you first.
I'm so excited to see which one you pick.
Yeah. I love this poem a lot, and I think it does a really good job of encapsulating the evolution of this book in many ways. And it's found on page 39, if you would like to read along, if you have a copy of the book. And it's titled The Bisexual to Lesbian Pipeline. Okay. Straight. Sparklers in the front yard. Cake eaten by the fistfuls, rectangular pizza, 3 a.m. calzones. Not straight. Red wine by the bottle, diner breakfast sausage, fireworks over the Ben Franklin, cardamom tea in New York. Bisexual. Tofu stir fry in my kitchen, the blood moon rising, fireworks from our rooftop, jalapeno chips in the park together. Lesbian. Injera on your rooftop, sunset in the bay glass, fireworks sparking in our hands, Sweet potato casserole with you, home again.
Thank you for reading that.
Yeah. As I was reading it, I felt my voice getting softer the further down the page that I went. And I think that's also the imagery started to loosen and become more flowing and more sensual the further down the page. I mean, we went from cake eaten by the fistfuls to injera on your rooftop, which is also a food that you eat by the hand, but it's not by the fistful. I mean, you could if you wanted, which I do, but there's an intimacy to it. And I also, it's, for me, just even that shift, like cake eaten by the fistfuls reminded me of like when I was a baby, you know? That's like the only time I think I've really eaten cake by the fistfuls. And then injera reminds me of, this is Ethiopian bread that I learned when I lived in New York City. And it was a time when I was coming into my queerness and I was meeting people who were introducing me to other cultures. And so there's just like the expansion of consciousness that's associated with eating this kind of food too. So yeah, I chose to read this poem because it had these 4 different periods of your life. And we feel that evolution throughout the collection of poems, but also the connection to food feels really important throughout this book too. So I'd love to hear a little bit about this poem and what it felt like for you to receive that, to hear someone else read it.
It felt lovely. It was so sweet to see you smiling while you're reading it. I mean, I think that's kind of the dream when you write something, is that something you write will like make somebody feel something, or it will resonate for them in maybe a totally different way than you thought, but that it will touch them in some way. That's my dream anyways. So it felt really sweet to hear you choose this poem and read this poem. And I think just as you're talking about even that like cake by the fistfuls in the beginning and injera on the rooftop at the end of the poem, I think in that whole first section around straight is like there's this feeling of like denial, and that cake by the fistfuls is like a literal memory of like getting caught eating cake in the pantry when I was a kid because I hadn't had enough cake. So I had to sneak it and literally try and like shove it in my mouth on the floor of the kitchen. And then in the end with the injeras, there's like really is this like sensual, slow experience that I associate with eating food with your hands now, that feels like also so shared and so communal and so soft, and it's not rushed, and there's time, and we're not hiding. So I love that you pointed out those 2 things. And I think I really wanted to write a poem that sort of explained the journey with sexuality in how it actually happened, like those were literally ways that I identified to myself. I never was like, hey, everyone, I'm identifying as not straight anymore. But that is like how I felt to myself because I wasn't ready to take on other labels. So for a really long time, I was like, inside, I'm not straight, but to the world, like, that's what I'll share. And as I was like growing up and growing more into myself and slowly testing out like being myself in all of these different ways, including and beyond queerness, food holds so much memory for me and so much connection to the body. And so, yeah, food is all throughout this collection. Food is on the cover with this orange moon. It's all throughout, and it feels like an important part of the experience, and it's central, and it's based in the memories. Like each one of these things is a specific memory for me, and I love writing about that.
Yeah. And from an astrological perspective, it's such a good example of the Taurus polarity to Scorpio. I mean, Taurus is connected to the 5 senses. It is a sign that is associated with making food, sharing food, and again, you have South Node in Taurus with Black Moon, Lilith in Taurus, and then Pallas Athene in Taurus. So, yeah, this polarity is alive and awake in your chart. So I see it reflected in your poems. And something I love about poetry is that we can have different experiences with it. It can be something that we have that's very private, like laying in bed reading your book, but we can also have it be a mediator to create conversation between the two of us. And so it's a different experience to share it with you and to talk about it. But I could literally talk about this poem for the next 20 minutes with you. Like that's how cool poetry is. It like just opens up so many doorways to remembering. And the other aspect that I think is cool about it is that, well, when you're by yourself and you're reading it, it's in your head and you get the experience of seeing it on the page, which this poem slithers. Like, for us listening to it in podcast form, we hear it, and that's a completely different experience than seeing it. And so I didn't actually know that how much more sensual my voice would get as I was reading the poem until I read it out loud. Yeah. But then it helped me understand also how the shape of the poem is laid out on the page. And so it's sort of like 4 different poems in one. So it's like straight, not straight, bisexual, lesbian, and they slither down the page, which is making me kind of think of a snake, which is making me think of transformation, shedding layers. You know, there's so much that we could get into it. And so I do love this poem. And I thought out of all the poems, like to read one that kind of gives you an idea of the evolution of your story, this one felt like one of them. And it made me laugh too. Like it had some humor to it. I don't know if that was on purpose, but I was just like 3 a.m. calzones, been there.
Yeah. I think I've gotten that feedback multiple times about different poems, but I was like, oh, I didn't really mean for that to be funny, but people are like, that was funny. Like, okay. Yeah. But yeah, who hasn't been there? 3 a.m. calzones, you know.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just explain a little bit about Scorpio for those listening, and we can maybe both share a little bit of why we think that this collection has Scorpio themes in it. But these are just a few bullet points that I wrote out. Your poems are bringing darkness into the light, particularly around themes connected to Scorpio, which is sexuality. It can be trauma and grief, our psychology. And so, but what takes it even more for me that feels like an expression of Scorpio is actually the act of doing something reflective with that. And so it's creating beauty out of the darkness, creating something that allows you to be in a process to share that transmutes that. And it's that water element of reflection. And also that water element of offering healing. I also think of Scorpio as a sign that is like can be quite rebellious, and maybe it's more of an unconscious rebellion. Like it's like I think of Bjork for Scorpio with unconscious rebellion, where people are like, Bjork, you're a feminist. She's like, I'm really just expressing myself. You know, like it's not as conscious of a choice with Scorpio to be a feminist or to be an activist. It just is, because it's like a part of the person. It's part of the desires. And there's no other way of existing or being for Scorpio. Those are just some things that I felt were Scorpio.
Yeah, that resonates so much. I think bringing darkness into light feels really true. And also moving darkness into beauty, like that also feels connected to Libra and Scorpio at the same time. And I think even in one of the poems at the end, like there's a line where I'm like, look at the wreckage, make something beautiful. Like that's literally like this collection is that. And I think also as I've been coming more into my Libra sun, something that I didn't resonate with for a long time, but now I really do, that connection to beauty, and beauty is something that matters and is important and can be so life-giving, feels really present too. But I think what feels so Scorpio about it is what I wrote on the back cover is like, it's a story of death and rebirth. That feels like that's what this collection really is. Like that's Scorpio. I have a Scorpio tattoo on my arm, actually, even though, like you said, I'm not a Scorpio, because for me, when I got it, I was like, oh, my North Node in Scorpio is about a commitment to that. It's about a commitment to transformation, and it's about a commitment to dying continually and being reborn. And I feel like that's what this collection is about, too.
Yeah, that's right. On the back, and in orange letters, moon sign is a story of death and rebirth. And it's so interesting. So on the Scorpio new moon back this past year in 2021, I interviewed a queer musician named Lilith O'Rourke. They're based out of Australia, and they're a Scorpio, and they have bright orange hair. So we actually talked for a bit about why orange felt Scorpio. And so it's coming up again. Like, I've seen this giant orange, it's like blood orange moon that's dripping on the cover, and then there's a cosmic backdrop. What do you think about the color orange? And why is this an actual orange on the front? I feel like I can see little orange slices in it, but it's kind of overlaid with moon.
Yeah, so actually orange is my favorite color right now, so just say that too. But I think why orange felt so right is this deep connection that I have to the food of oranges, and also to the color through like sunsets and experiences out in nature, but especially to the food. Like, when I was going through some of the things that I talk about in these poems, like, I couldn't eat. I was so sad and so horny and so falling in love. I like couldn't eat anything except for oranges. So oranges like literally sustained me. And when I was grieving so much around my parents, like, oranges were a food that literally gave me life and was like the only thing that I was able to eat for whatever reason. So I wanted oranges to be in here. And I also think, like, I have a couple of poems that include like the peeling of oranges, and that feels like really sensual and really slow and very Taurus as well. But actually, my partner designed the cover and the print and everything, and I just told them that I wanted there to be a full moon and a blood drip and an orange, and those feel like the elements that like I really wanted to pull together for this. And this is what they made, and I really love it. So it is an orange and it's a moon.
Yeah, I love the cover a lot. You can let your partner know.
I'll let them know.
I had memories resurface about oranges when you were talking about them, but a few things I associate oranges with. The first one that came to mind was when I lived in LA, I had an orange tree outside of my bathroom window, and so I could take a shower and literally like pick an orange out and be in the shower, like be in water. So it was like a very healing experience to have that tree outside my window. So that memory came up for me. And then also my dad, who is a Scorpio, I never made this connection before. He loves oranges. I have these memories of him sitting in his like lazy boy chair, reading the newspaper at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., like late in the night. It wasn't like early morning oranges. It was like late night oranges, and just like eating them. And that was like something he did almost every night growing up. And he is very Scorpio, very like reflective and quiet and pensive. And you're like, do you have secrets? What's going on over there? But he's just eating his oranges. I'm going to show you.
Read the newspaper.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's cool to hear the connection to oranges and that relationship to being so deep in a process that you didn't feel like you could eat anything but oranges. And so there's something about that satiated you or brought you healing and comfort, and there's a lot in there with the oranges.
I think there's something there as you're talking where I'm like, as I was like becoming more alive, the only thing I could eat is this food that feels so alive. Like, it's so vibrant and it's so juicy and it's so like, it's such an alive food. And this whole experience, I feel like, was about me becoming more alive when I felt like I wasn't really living. And that food was like there for me. Oranges are really there for me.
Yeah, it's a really special fruit. Even today, I don't have an orange tree outside my bathroom window anymore, but I keep orange essential oil in my shower and I'll put drops. I did this morning actually before we gathered. Yeah, it is really healing, and I think it does really balance darkness in a lot of ways. It's so cloudy and rainy here in Portland that to have that orange essence in the morning is really helpful for me. And I think that this is something we could definitely do on as ritual, eclipse season. It's like being light on the ritual, and especially with the North Node in Taurus right now is reminding us to go towards the sensual. And so just find yourself a nice juicy orange on this full moon. That's what I'm going to be doing.
I'm going to do that as well now.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Even when you're saying that, I'm just getting this image of like the brightness and freshness of the orange, like cutting through the fog. I'm imagining it's foggy in Portland. I have no idea. I've never been to Portland actually, but there's like, something about that like brightness that cuts through or moves through.
Yeah, and it's making me think of the sacral chakra too, and its connection, which this is Scorpio's part of the body, right? It's the reproductive organs, the hips, the lower back. That's Libra, but it's all connected down there. And this is center of sexuality, creativity. There's a lot here for us to reflect on, and also, what might it reveal about your sexuality on how you peel an orange, or do you slice your orange? Do you eat it without peeling it? There's. I'm curious how we all connect with this fruit. So, what poem do you think reflects most what you're feeling on this Scorpio full moon? And maybe you could read that one to us.
Oh my God. Can I take a minute to flip through?
Yeah, of course.
What does reflect how I'm feeling?
I like that there's a lot of blackout poems in here too.
I loved writing those poems.
Which is also quite nostalgic for me too. Like there was a period in my life, especially when I was like exploring my sexuality, where that was a practice I had, was blackout poetry.
I love that.
And I think a lot of people can relate to blackout poetry. It can take us back to a certain place in time, like before even reading the poem, just like seeing that as a blackout poem.
Yeah.
Which also feels Scorpio to me. One of my friends she has a lot of Scorpio energy. She's a Scorpio sun. She does a lot of collage work, just like taking like all the bits of other art and putting it together in a new way. And so taking the words, and it's a Bible blackout poem too, right? So it's like taking something that maybe has caused you pain and transforming it into something new. Yeah.
Yeah, those felt really healing to write. And I think I love blackout poems so much because they're so accessible, like there's like, you literally don't have to know anything about writing at all. And you can just like get in there and see what feels right and what comes up. And 10 people can do the same section of text and come up with completely different poems. So I think it's so beautiful in that way too. Yeah. I think I have the poem.
Okay.
That's about how I'm feeling. It's Daddy.
What page?
Page 60.
Okay.
You ask me to spank you, so I do. I am getting free. I reach between your legs and lick my fingers. You shudder under my palm, my fist, my nails, my tongue, this goddamn wooden spatula. I am getting free. I ask you if your parents spanked you as a kid and you say, no, did yours? You shudder under this spatula. This spatula I'm hitting you with reminds me of my dad's wooden spoon. I ask you if you know this spatula. You say it's called a pervertible, an ordinary thing you use for sex. I'm hitting you with my dad's wooden spoon. I think about everything that becomes something else. You say it's an ordinary thing transformed. My dad's wooden spoon, me, you, anger, love, desire, everything becomes something else. You ask me to spank you, so I do.
Wow.
I love this poem, and it brings up a lot for me. I think every time writing it did, and reading it always does too. But I think this through line of an ordinary thing transformed, everything becomes something else. Everything changes, but also becomes the same, but becomes new, but is different, feels like this Scorpio moon for me. And this through line too of like, I am getting free. There's like this reclamation for me that I think it's so powerful, and always has been for me, to take what has been painful, like we talked about even with the Bible, and like turn it into something else, turn it into something that can be healing, turn it into something that can be a source of pleasure, that can even be sexual, that can be really hot, that can be amazing. And yeah, in this poem where I'm literally talking about turning like being non-consensually hit as a kid into that, and something that I do for my partner as an act of love and care, consensually as something that they want. And so yeah, there's a lot in that poem for me.
Yeah. And there's also that connection to food again that comes up. I mean, because it's this tool that we use to eat food that's being turned into something that is more representation of sexual expression or connection. So I was struck by that too. And also there's just like imagery of like, I reach between your legs and lick my fingers. And I'm also thinking back to, I always lick my fingers after I eat an orange. So it's taking us back to that kind of sensual connection to the food. And hearing you read it out loud too, like the last line, you asked me to spank you, and so I do. There's something in the phrase "I do" that reminded me of like marriage and partnership. Just when you read it out loud, yeah, some deep feels here.
Yeah, I think. I feel like the more that I talk about it, the more I'm like, this whole collection of poems is just about like all of these different ways of getting free. And like, it's like named specifically in this poem, but it's like, that's what the whole thing is about. It's about getting free.
Yeah, this makes me think of the next poem that I wanted to share. And I think this might be our last one. We might have two more in us.
Yeah.
I would love to just like read all of them, but you can pick up the book. If someone wanted to pick up Moon Sign, is it still available for purchase?
So they can go to living-open.com/moonsign, and it will be out everywhere on May 20th. So very soon.
Oh, this is like I have an early copy?
You pre-ordered, so you have a pre-order copy.
Okay, so I mean, it seems like you're lining that with the cosmos right there at the start of Gemini season. You can pick up a copy, and I do think that this is always interesting for me. Like when we have a Scorpio full moon, oftentimes we go into Gemini season right after, and Gemini is also about light and dark, but maybe in a way that's more through communication than reflection. And we're in a lover's year too, which I think will really get activated during Gemini season. So, we're riding the wave of Scorpio moon into eclipse into Gemini season this year. So it all feels like good timing.
And all my Scorpio placements in that third house.
You go, in the Gemini house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm noticing you have a Gemini midheaven.
Mm-hmm.
It's lining up with a public offering here. So I'll put the link to order the book if you send it to me in the show notes for the podcast.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was, this Scorpio Full Moon Total Lunar Eclipse is on May 15th, Sunday, May 15th. I came out at the age of 15.
Oh.
We mentioned the number 15 earlier in our conversation. Do you remember what it was now? I can't remember. We're like, let's remember that number. We're going to come back to 15 later.
15 degrees. Yeah. Juno and North Node at 15 degrees.
That's
Scorpio.
It. North Node and Juno are at the 15th degree.
Yeah.
This full moon's on the 15th. Uranus is in Taurus at the 15th degree. And 15 is a devil card in the tarot. So I was already thinking, I was like, ooh, May 15th, this for a Scorpio eclipse, definitely getting some devil vibes. And I would say that even though devil is the soul growth card for Capricorn, I think because it is connected to the underworld, it very much is connected to a lot of Scorpio themes too. And, we were talking about this idea of liberation and freeing yourself. And I think of the people who are often chained to the devil and how the devil can be connected to, our religious trauma, people condemning us, saying that we're bad, that we're evil, that we're going to hell. There's so many layers to the devil card. It's shadow work. There can also be a bit of even the poem that you just read to us, Daddy, could be found in the devil card. So I was curious about this number 15, being it's May 15th in the devil card, and now even more after seeing your North Node at the 15th degree. So then I turned to page 15 in your book.
I was just wondering, what's on page 15?
Well, it's the title of the collection, Moon Sign. So I was like, whoa.
Whoa. Yeah.
So I thought that was powerful to see that on page 15. I was actually going to ask if you did it on purpose.
I did not.
What's so fun about putting your work out in the world is that people start to find pieces that are unconscious that maybe are just hidden in there. And I always just as a tarot nerd, I'm always ooh, poem one's the magician. Poem 2 is the high priestess. I'm always to see how it lines up. So yeah, maybe you could read Moon Sign to us, and we'll keep in mind everything we learned about the number 15, the devil card, your North Node with Juno, and also this full moon.
Yeah. Moon Sign. Some days I want to be abused again. I miss the dopamine rush of a binge after a famine, the steady hum in my clitoris of desperation, the warm honey of begging for love. Give me lies, cheat on me, manipulate me, gaslight me, choke me, withhold your affection, pretend you don't realize you're destroying me, punish me for having needs, and I drip, 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 cascading rain after the drought. I get scared walking down the street, but in my fantasies, I'm being raped over a kitchen sink and discarded like a pretty little useless thing.
A deep exhale.
Yeah. That's wild that this is on page 15.
I also got chills while you were reading it too. Is this interesting mix of sensations?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something in there of the fantasy, the dark fantasy. Something about it gave me the chills. Not in a chilling way, but maybe in a chilling way. It's hard for me. It's a mix of sensations that I felt in my body.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first poem that I wrote that I felt scared to write and scared to share with other people. So I think it gives me a little bit of chills too.
Yeah. What does it feel like for you to I don't know, place the devil card out next to this poem?
It feels so right. I think with the devil card, something that can happen for me is this feeling of like being in a maze, or like there's confusion, or like it's not always clear what the shadow is or what those like chains are. Like it's not so obvious sometimes. And I think like when I was writing this poem, I was in a relationship with a cis man who was a lovely person and who was a very safe person and very kind. And I was so unhappy. And I was like, oh, it's me. I'm the problem. It's because of my trauma. It's because I learned in this abusive relationship I had before that that love needed to be so like heightened and push and pull and taken away. And that's why I'm unhappy. And it can't be because I'm just gay or this relationship isn't right or there has to be more than just safety.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that at the time when I was writing this poem. And I think there's a lot of shame inside this poem, and that feels really right for the devil card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, the ways that we might condemn ourselves.
Mm.
And there's a sense here of like, there's something wrong with me, but also the deeper implications of society at large and how we've inherited a lot of those beliefs too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this poem is so rich and alive for us on this full moon. There's likely a lot of us are feeling this poem. The Scorpio full moon total lunar eclipse is like, this is a time where for those who have not explored their shame or their sexuality, could be really, the things are churning right now. And we've just even seen, over the past few weeks, how heightened it's been in the collective with things that are unfolding. So it's an intense lunation. And so having you on the podcast for this full moon does offer us a window into how we might transform or let go of the past with joy, and to reclaim our joy, our queer joy. And so we can look to others who have maybe, released themselves from an abusive relationship or a situation that you felt like you were suffocating or dying. And, this could be like the shadow of Scorpio. And so it's my hopes that whoever's listening to this right now receives your wisdom from going through these processes. And, we can read them now and it feels all light because we're having a conversation in some ways.
Yeah.
It's still dark, but there's like a lightness to it. And I think this is like the Gemini quality of talking about the poems, but to actually live this and to be in it, to use the devil as an example, it can feel like hell, like you're in hell. Like, it's just like, it's really hard. So thank you for your willingness to share this poem. I know you said this was maybe one of the ones that you felt more scared or fear around writing it. And then I'm sure like publishing it and now reading it out loud is like a whole nother process. And so, even the Scorpio full moon for you is you're still going through the transformation because it's out in the world now. Mm-hmm. And so emotions might churn for you, being vulnerable to now share it on a podcast or a public platform. Yeah. So the healing, it's always happening. It's always unfolding. Yeah. So thank you for writing this and sharing it.
Thank you so much for reading it and having me on and reading one of my poems out loud. That feels so good to hear you read it and just reflect back all the Scorpio themes and the things that they made you feel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it might be nice, like along this idea of joy, because I actually do think that Scorpio, like the Taurus is connected to joy, like the joy we might feel when we're eating an orange under a tree. Mm-hmm. And I believe that Scorpio evolves through Taurus and comes into a great deal of joy through their process. So maybe it would be nice to have a poem that closes out our time together that you think might be a representation of queer joy.
I love that idea. Okay. I think I have to read Fragrant Offering on page 50.
You know what's funny is if I were to choose a blackout poem to read, this was the one that I had picked. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Cool. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Fragrant Offering, and this is a Bible blackout poem. A life of love, a fragrant offering. Sexuality, a holy place for darkness, light, goodness, truth. What pleases darkness is shame. The secret visible, wake up, rise, live, get drunk on debauchery, be filled with one another.
So when you make these blackout poems, is this actually like from the Bible? Is that what that means? A Bible blackout poem?
Yeah, I have my childhood Bible with me at my apartment. I took it from my parents' house a few years ago, and my mom was like, "What are you going to do with that?" And I was like, "Nothing, don't worry about it."
It's a giant Sharpie.
Yeah. And I just, often I'll flip to just a random part of the Bible. I think for this one, I intentionally chose the passage, but yeah, and then I'll just literally like cross out directly in the Bible and form the poem right there.
I'm just like, some of the words in here, I'm like, wow, that was in the Bible?
Well, I have to tell you, the word sexuality was not in the Bible. That was two words that got broken up. Sexual was in the Bible, and then it was sexual immorality, and I made it sexuality.
Yeah, I was wondering. Oh, that's cool. I like the breaking up words too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone wanted to get your book, we talked about that, but also I was reading in your bio too that you're a trauma-informed facilitator in Philly. So do you have any other offerings or ways that you're connecting with people at this time?
Yeah, the main thing that I do right now is facilitate breathwork and facilitate a religious trauma part reclamation circle, part support group, part community connection called Holy. And I usually run it every season. It's not happening right now, but probably in the fall it will be. And it's one of my favorite things that I do because it's bringing together people who are, it's not specifically for queer people, but it almost always ends up being almost all queer people, but who have these religious trauma backgrounds and are trying to like heal and make lives that feel good and full and whole. So I love facilitating that and holding that space.
Great. It's such a great offering and needed. So thank you. And thank you for being with us today. All right, Cosmic Cousins, as always, it's an honor to be here with you. If you know of anyone who you think would benefit from this podcast, you could send it along. And also, if you feel called, you could rate, review, leave some stars. I like to read comments sometimes to see what people are saying about the podcast. So let's check it out. Let's look. Babesy Cat wrote, "This podcast is so calming and therefore healing at the same time. Thank you for who you are." 5 stars. Thanks, Babesy Cat. I'm wishing for you all a gentle rest of your eclipse season. Drink extra water and remember, deep breaths.